Welcome to this Chancellor Circle virtual business briefing hosted by the College of the Canyons Foundation. On behalf of our Chancellor, Dr. Van Hook, the College of the Canyons Foundation, and the Chancellor Circle members, it is my pleasure to begin this morning's business briefing. The Chancellor Circle is pleased to offer this business briefing series to our members and the broader business community. And the goal of these calls is to create a source of information that's helpful for you around the COVID climate that we're in, but also to create an authentic community for you and your businesses. We are now in the fourth week of what we hope to be several more topics that we will present relevant to businesses during the COVID-19 time we are in. Of course, the Chancellor Circle is more than simply a group of businesses or community leaders. Together, here at the College of the Canyons Foundation, we support innovation and provide life-changing opportunities for students at College of the Canyons. And our businesses, a part of Chancellor Circle, help do that. In fact, just this week, we will be starting the application period for our faculty to apply for Chancellor Circle mini grants. That's happening this coming week. Remote education and remote learning or not, come or high water. These mini grants are small $1,000 mini grants that help to empower new innovative ideas initiated by our faculty and support student success at College of the Canyons. The support of our members has made this possible. It's completely funded by our members. And to date, we've awarded over 150 mini grants, 150 $1,000 mini grants over the last several years. So for those that are members on the call today, you should be very proud as we continue to do great work with the Chancellor Circle. I'm going to take a moment here and share my screen as we get started. So just bear with me. Okay, can someone give you a thumbs up that you can see that? Awesome, thank you. Well, today we are welcoming two business leaders that are friends of College of the Canyons Foundation. But before we introduce our guests, allow me to address a few housekeeping items as we've done each week. Now, many of you can run circles around me with Zoom by now. You're pros, so to prove that, I have an assignment for you. It's supposed to be fun. This is not, we don't want to make this a stuffy webinar. So Jill is going to choose the most creative virtual background after today's presentation. So don't get too distracted by Googling crazy images, but take a minute and pop up your favorite virtual background, and afterwards we'll see who can come up with the most creative. As you enter the meeting today, you were muted automatically, but we don't want this to be a one-way conversation. So please, I know it's 9 o'clock in the morning, but plan on asking questions. You can use the chat and write us questions, or you can simply type the word question or comment in the chat, and we will come back to you and call on you. If you have a question or comment on the phone, if you're calling in, you can use *6 to unmute yourself, or to mute yourself back. All right, finally, we hope you'll join us again next week. Next week's conversation is going to be around improving employee engagement, leadership strategies during and post-COVID-19. The presentation will be presented by Dr. Barbara Sweet here at the College of the Canyons Employee Training Institute. We'll also hear from Rafael Paris, Senior Vice President of People Operation at Scorpion, and again, all about employee engagement, whether it be remote employees or your frontline employees dealing with COVID-19, or even furloughed employees. And in just a moment, Carly will be sharing the registration link to that event and in the chat. All right, Jill, it's my pleasure to hand it off to Jill Milady, President of Milady Direct Marketing and Chairwoman of Chancellor Circle Steering Committee, to welcome us this morning. And then we'll be introducing our first presenter, Jeff Forrest. Jill.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Sorry, my other phone is ringing here. Let me turn that off. I want to welcome you this morning. This is our, I believe, fourth business briefing, and they have been wildly successful. We have some incredible stories to share with you. Maybe not today, but we will share them in the future of some just wonderful success stories that our Chancellor Circle members and our VIA members have had through our business briefings. And I mean, that to me is so inspiring that we can help just one business owner through COVID-19, this pandemic. So I thank the college and especially Dr. Diane Van Hook for having this great idea of hosting these business briefings every Friday morning. I know that you're getting a lot of value of it from it, and I think this morning we're going to hear a wonderful story from Jeff Forrest, who he's been talking about this for since he joined the college, and I'm really excited to hear from him, as well as Tom Williams, the owner of Chick-fil-A, and how he has operated through the COVID-19. So thank you very much for being here this morning, and I'll go ahead and turn this over to James to get it started.
Thank you, Jill. Well, we're going to just dive right in. We will take a couple questions right after Jeff's presentation, and then as we also introduce Tom right after that. But let me then introduce Jeff Forrest. Jeff serves as the Vice President of Economic Development for College of the Canyons, which focuses on aligning career and technical education programs with the needs of industry, while offering job training for minorities, women, veterans, and dislocated workers. In addition, Jeffrey oversees a number of business units dedicated to providing companies with training resources for growing their business. In this role, Jeffrey has created hundreds of partnerships in the Santa Cruz Valley and beyond. In August of 2017, Jeffrey co-founded the Strong Workforce Apprenticeship Group, also known as SWAG, helping employers fill their critical needs through employee apprenticeships. Jeffrey's education includes the University of Missouri, St. Louis, and an MBA from Lindenwood University. Jeffrey, we are really proud to have you on this meeting today, and we really look forward to your presentation, and we invite you to take it away. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and you can start.
Thank you, James. Much appreciated. Can you all see my screen, the presentation? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, well, super. Thanks to the Chancellor Circle for this opportunity. We are so appreciative for the privilege to be able to share on this business briefing. And today we're going to talk about managing your business through crisis. Some of the lessons that we learned through Ferguson, Missouri. And here, let me make sure we get this up again. There we go. All right, very good. And I'll be glad to, again, take some classes afterwards. We're all good? Perfect.
Yeah. We can see it now. Thank you.
All right. So it all started in 2014, August 2014. Life was good. My wife and I, we were running a small business near Ferguson, Missouri that imports products from Africa and Asia for distribution. The company, known as Afro World, had received numerous awards and was featured in business journals. We had garnered some national attention. In addition, I was serving as an academic dean at a community college and won several awards for teaching and creating innovative programs that promoted student success. So life was awesome until the Ferguson Crisis. On August 9th, 2014, Officer Darren Wilson with the Ferguson Police Department confronted a teenager, Michael Brown, outside of a mini-mart. A few minutes after the exchange, Michael Brown lay dying in the street. His death sparked outrage in what became known as the Ferguson Crisis. And our company is located 3 miles from the epicenter of this crisis. So here's crisis lesson number 1. A crisis is contagious. The Ferguson Crisis made the city an economic wasteland, with more than 50% of businesses leaving within 6 months. And by the way, they never returned. Within 1 month, Afro World, our company, saw its revenues drop by more than 60%. The college I worked for, which is located 2.8 miles from the center of the crisis, experienced an enrollment decline of 40% in the semester following the crisis, And now all of a sudden, layoffs were now being discussed, which is part of the reason why I ended up in California, actually. And so with crisis lessons, well, let me continue. Being contagious, during this crisis also, I learned that my mother had contracted an aggressive form of breast cancer. This was her third battle with cancer. And so during this time, I was watching my mother fight for her life while keeping my job at the community college and fighting to stay in business. All of that was going on within the context of this crisis. And life was very, very difficult. Life was hard. And so when small businesses talk about the suffering and the struggles they're going through, I know a little bit about it because I've lived it. I've experienced it firsthand. So here's crisis lesson number 2. You've got to pivot. You must pivot in order to survive. No crisis is going to allow you to be normal. Normal is completely out of the picture, and you may not return to normal ever again. And so we knew that our business, if it was going to make it, that it would be changed forever. Fortunately, the landlord of AfroWorld canceled all rent payments for the foreseeable future. They basically said, you don't have to pay me until you can. So don't worry about it, just hang in there. And so this gave our company the lifeline that we needed in order to do the pivot. And so our pivot involved 4 strategies, and I'd like to review each of them with you now. Pivot strategy number 1, visualize. As we looked at our empty building and having no phone calls for orders, we began to ask ourselves, why are we still open? All these businesses that left Ferguson to go to other parts of St. Louis because of the looting and all the things that were happening. And so we began to ask ourselves, should we even be open? And so we had to go back in search of our why. And our why had 3 components to it. First, we were open to provide jobs to individuals in the community who struggled to find work. Many of the people, in fact, all of the employees that we had were employment challenged. They were formerly incarcerated. They were single mothers. They came from disadvantaged backgrounds. We worked with local organizations who would send us people that no one else would hire, and we would hire them. We would train them and teach them about entrepreneurship. And so we wanted to continue that. Also, we supported organizations that worked to advance the well-being of the community. We supported more than a dozen community-based organizations that looked to help those, again, who were from at-risk backgrounds, and we supported them financially, we supported them operationally, in any way that we could. And then we wanted to generate revenue to sustain our family and the loved ones, and our loved ones rather. And so that was our why. That was the motivation in which we were able to say, okay, we're going to stay in business. We're not going to quit no matter what, because we have a good reason, the right reason, a powerful reason to stay in business. And so I encourage those of you who may be online wondering what's going on, visualize. Don't panic, visualize, and ask the very simple question, why are you in business? What is your purpose? And it's got to be beyond making a buck. It's got to be something deeper, because crises, they will, the thing about a crisis is that it will get to the core of your soul, of your being, to which everything that you value comes into play. And the person who you are will be displayed based on what that crisis does and how you respond to it. So you definitely want to start with visualizing your business. The second pivot strategy was to value relationships. In a crisis, we see that there, at least for AfroWorld, there were 3 major relationships that we wanted to secure and foster and cultivate and strengthen. And that was with our employees. And I want to put these in rank order. Our employees came first. I believe that the reputation of a company lives and dies based on how we treat our people. And for us, it was all about compassion. We didn't lay off anyone. We did everything we could. However, there were employees who sought work elsewhere because they felt that they were in a place that was just simply not safe. And we supported them. We helped them find jobs elsewhere. We helped them with their resume, whatever they needed us to do to help them look and find work elsewhere. We supported that. But for the rest of those who decided to stay, we did everything we could to let them know that we were not going out of business. We're going to keep them on board, and that we still got customers to serve. Second, we reached out to our customers. In a crisis, you've got to let your customers know immediately that you are still in business and that you are capable of serving them. You just can't let them know. The doors are still open. No, no, no. You've got to be more specific than that, that your doors are open. When are your doors open? What are the products that you're offering? What are the deals that you're offering? And I was really shocked and surprised and impressed with the fact that our people really stepped up. We had 100,000 folks in our database, and we just started calling some of our most significant customers. We had about 10,000 of them or so, and they were just so pleased that we took the time to call them. We didn't email them. We didn't snail mail them. We used that for some of our lesser customers, but for the customers who put bread on the table, we called them and they said, oh, it's so good to hear that you guys are in business. Are you okay? Because this crisis went across the nation. It focused on Ferguson, Missouri, but everybody in the country had been hearing about it. And we were getting calls from all over the place about our welfare, wanting to know if we were okay, and we were. And I will say this, because of the work we did in the community, we were not looted or vandalized, but there were businesses around us that were. But folks respected us. We had garnered that respect, and they left us alone. And so we never experienced some of the looting and some of the break-ins that some of the other businesses did because of the service that we had already established in terms of working within our community. Then you've got to work with your vendors and your suppliers. We called everybody and say, hey, look, we're good. Can we negotiate in terms of what we can do? Everyone from our electric company to our folks in China and our folks in Africa. We made sure that they knew that we're going to continue to be in business, but that we may need more flexible terms in terms of payment and things of that nature. So we reached out to all of them. We communicated with them. We communicated with the IRS. We let them know, hey, listen, I don't know if you heard, there's been a crisis in Ferguson. They were very open to working with us. We had an excellent relationship with them in the first place. And so we had just came through an audit. We were 99% of an audit, and we had received accolades from the Internal Revenue Service. And so we had that reputation going for us as well. And so we communicated with everyone. I think as a business, you don't want to go silent. Even though your activity has gone silent, you must be loud. You must be the messenger, the ambassador. You must be the champion of your own future and of your own business. And so while business is silent, you've got to be loud. You've got to be on the phones. You've got to be talking to the people who put food and put bread on the table, put a roof over your head, and let them know you are still in business. Pivot strategy number 3, virtualize. One of the biggest contentions that me and my wife had as we were running the business is she was sold on retail. She loved face-to-face. And I was trying to push the business online for years. And we would always bump heads about getting online. Well, let me tell you, the Ferguson Crisis pushed us online. It was no problem. And my wife all of a sudden became this instant social media expert. I mean, she uses everything now, and our business is completely online. And so at first we were 70 to 80% retail in terms of our energy, 10 to 20% online. That has totally flipped. We are completely online. And again, my wife has I think she surprised herself at how quickly she could adapt to an electronic online format. And so if you go on Facebook, you're going to see her there, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. She's everywhere. And she follows even College of the Canyons. And she might tweet something or retweet College of the Canyons and some of the great work we're doing as well. And so that has really helped our business. And it has really been one of the most probably critical pivots that we had to make in order to survive. And lastly, the 4th pivot strategy, you got to volunteer. You can't take a crisis and look at it and just simply say, well, I'm suffering too. You got to think about others who might be a little bit worse off than you. And so immediately we became this hub for the community. And a lightning rod eventually for the nation. My wife Sheila was interviewed, featured on the front page of the Wall Street Journal because of all the work that she was doing. At this time, I was balancing between spending days at the hospital with my mother, who was fighting for her life, and working at the college and working at Afro World when I could. And so my wife had to take over the lion's share of what will become of this company. In addition, as you see in the photo, that's John King from CNN. And so I was there with him. In fact, I took that picture. I believe it says Stuart Clark, but I took some pictures as well. But yeah, they had their own photos there, but I took a bunch also. But she was interviewed by CNN in terms of how this crisis affected small businesses. And so we were getting national attention for what we did. In addition, we held open forums for people to speak and to rant, and we invited everybody. And so we eventually had the mayor of Ferguson, chief of local police, they came by, we had them speak. They were being vilified, they were being hated. There was a lot of issues of race and racism, and we became a hub in which we could have what we call these constructive, courageous conversations and bringing people together, and that really was helpful in getting the community to heal. In addition, national and local politicians would come by AfroWorld. We became this unofficial headquarters of the Democratic Party. I have photos of my wife with Barack Obama as well, and she eventually received a letter from Michelle Obama, a personal letter for her efforts as well. And so all of that went into it, and the point that I'm making is this: all of this is happening while we're going through a crisis. All of this is taking place. I've got a mother who's fighting breast cancer. I've got a job in which we're restructuring the college, and my position is not a part of what the college will become. And then I've got this business that's in survival mode, and yet at the same time, it's all about looking after others. And I'm not trying to make myself to be a saint. I'm trying to actually say that all of this went into helping my sanity. I believe that as we were volunteering, pouring our lives into the community, trying to virtualize, visualize, and talk with our customers, that really was healthy for us. That was good for us because it gave us context, and it helped us to see that we're not alone, that we're not fighting this battle by ourselves. And so that was very, very important. So where do things stand today? Well, since the crisis, our business has been on life support for the past 5 years. I had to pick up the slack financially. We sold our house, no family vacations, no splurging, no new vehicles. I live in an apartment. I've gone down, and when I was in St. Louis, it was a 5,000 square foot house on the river. And that's what we had. All that's gone now. And I also drove a Porsche. That's gone. I drive a Prius today. And so it's been sacrificed. And so we've lost it all. And don't cry for me. I want you to know I'm not looking to be on everybody's prayer list. We're good. We're alive. The business is still surviving. I help fund the business every month. I send to help my wife get through. This year was supposed to be a breakout year. In January of this year, my wife called me and said, sales are up 20%. And I was like, yes, finally, we are making our comeback after all the struggles. And then all of a sudden, we came face to face with our second crisis, COVID-19. And I tell people, why is it that we were so fortunate to get two crises? Most people get one. And so now we've got another crisis that we're going through. And so in finishing, we applied what we learned from Ferguson. The lessons from Ferguson did not go to waste on COVID-19. My wife took all the fabric and materials that she had imported from Africa, and then we connected with a manufacturer in China to produce, guess what? African print face mask. And it has been the hottest thing in the 5 years that we've been in business. And so as a result, we're distributing thousands of face masks across the country, and it's been a great lifeline. In fact, I was talking to my wife yesterday, and she goes, I've got money in the bank. And so things are really beginning to look up. The first crisis nearly ended our company, but its lessons that we learned from it actually helped us to create a new future as we're facing this current crisis. Things are looking up for AfroWorld, and in the midst of this crisis, we're actually having a decent year. We're finding a way to reinvent ourselves in the middle of it, and this story's to be continued. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them at this time. Other than that, I'll call up James Kniebly.
Thank you, Jeff. That was really amazing to hear your story. I've heard parts of that, and I'm completely inspired. Before we pass it on to Tom, I thought I'd point to a question that we had from Paul. So thank you, Paul, for sending that in. Sure. Specifically on marketing, I think, Jeff, this might be a good question as we kind of phase into question and answers and even focus more on COVID. Yeah. But lessons around what you just shared and, of course, your experience in the business community regarding marketing. So how has your marketing changed given this example of the business you just shared? the pandemic now, and what is your strategy for maximizing sales during a phased reopening for business?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think everyone who's online needs to probably think about that question. And so I hope that question gets written up in a chat for everybody to think about. And so that's a good question for Paul and Lisa. So let me address it from AfroWorld's perspective and maybe give some insights to others. One is you have to look at where your customers are. You just can't do what you used to do because the world has changed. And so our customers we saw as being online. And if they weren't, we're going to find ones that are. And so everything that we did went immediately online. We used to pay for print advertising. We would be in Ebony magazine and all these papers and Essence, and we were spending tens of thousands of dollars in print and other forms of things of that nature. I will say to Jill, we did maintain our postcard deliveries. And so we did continue to use constant contact and reach out by snail mail and postcards. So we didn't go completely electronic, but we had to shift it. Now we've gone from tens of thousands of dollars in ads expense to zero, other than the postcard options that we do for our special deals and our special customers. But it's virtually zero because everything now is social media. And we found that so far that has worked for us. And in terms of maximizing sales, it's all about deals. It's about reaching customers, sweetening the pot, and giving them the kind of service that they deserve so that they will know that they're dealing with a reputable company. Can you guys hear me okay?
I apologize. I took over for you, Jeff, and I was muted. So my apologies.
Okay.
All righty. So we're gonna thank you, Jeff. We're gonna continue and to hear from Tom, and then continue to write in questions for both our presenters, and we'll continue to look at those. My pleasure to introduce Tom Williams. Tom is the owner and operator of Chick-fil-A Valencia Town Center here in our community. However, prior to opening the restaurant, Tom, what year did you take over your restaurant?
January 1st, 2015.
2015. It's been a little bit longer than I was going to say. So, but prior to that, Tom was a naval officer for 22 years in the U.S. Navy. He flew E-2C Hawkeye aircraft off of aircraft carriers for half his naval career. The second half, he served at the Pentagon as a budget officer and completed his career acting as the controller of the Space and Naval Warfare Systems Command in San Diego, California. Tom's education includes an engineering degree from USC. He also holds an MBA and Master's of Finance from the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University. Of course, Tom and his family are residents of Santa Clarita, and Tom has been nothing but a joy to work with as a supporter of the College of the Canyons, of course, a member of the Chancellor's Circle, and just doing a great job of getting involved and giving back to the community. So thank you, Tom, for agreeing to be with us this morning and sharing some of the insight as kind of a continuation of Jeff's presentation, but an insight of what you're dealing with right now. I was going to go ahead and kick it off. Tom is kind of our business spotlight from a Chancellor's Circle member. So Tom, if you want to answer a question, I think this is what a lot of people are asking in terms of local business in Santa Clarita. What are your strategies? What are you thinking about in terms of reopening? I know you are open, but the dining room isn't open in your restaurant. A lot of operations are different. How are you going to get back to normal? So maybe if you could work that question into your presentation and address it as you see fit, and then I'll have that slide ready for you when you would like me to share some of your content. So take it away, Tom.
Thank you for the introduction, James. And Jeff, thank you for sharing your story. I hadn't heard it. It's incredible. It's fantastic to hear your persistence and the lessons that you've learned and how you're applying them to our current circumstances. You know, I felt a little strange when I put together the message that I wanted to share with everybody today, until I heard what Jeff had learned from his previous experience, and I couldn't be more closely aligned with the things that Jeff shared with us. It's remarkable. I didn't get to see his presentation about but what I want to share it's a mirror image. So if what we've shared today, the two of us, don't resonate with you folks today, then maybe you could take a second look or take a second listen to this this video because it's very, very important. James, I think the question you asked was, what is your strategy to getting business back to normal? And we chatted a little bit about teeing up that question beforehand, and the reason why it's phrased that way is because it's the wrong question to ask. It's the wrong question to be asking of ourselves. And Jeff did a fantastic job talking about this himself. And like when we think about what's next, we really have to think about who we are first. Who are we? Why are we here? What's our purpose? What's our purpose in being in business? Who do we want to be? Who do we want to be? And what's our vision for being a business? And only when you know your purpose as a business and your vision for the business, can you really answer the question, what is our place in this marketplace in order to adapt to our current circumstances? Okay, so it's like, I think people, I read books, I read business books or business seminars, I listen to people talk and they talk about this, it's all about the purpose, it's all about the vision, it's all about, and that's very difficult to hear sometimes because it requires a lot of work. It requires you stepping back several steps just to get to where you want to be, which is, how do I deal with what's next? And I think Jeff did a fantastic job showing how that process was so important and instrumental in his ability to deal with his crisis. And it's been extraordinarily remarkable for us to be able to deal with our own situation. So who are we? Why are we here? What is our purpose? Who do we want to be? What is the vision for our business? And then with those two questions answered, what is our place, okay, in this marketplace, because there is no getting back to normal. I mean, there is no time machine. The environment is going to be different. What we face, the community, the business landscape, the way our customers behave and what they're thinking about, it's different. Normal is changed. And we have to accept that as business owners and as folks doing business in this community. And Jeff said this a couple of times, and sitting right in the smack dab in the middle of my notes. We must meet our customers where they are. Okay, we must meet our customers where they are. And I'll take that one step further. Jeff took it two steps further. We also must meet our employees where they are. Okay, our employees, just like the marketplace has changed. Just like our customers have changed, our employees have changed as well. And the only way that we can make consistent decisions that are well aligned with consistent decisions on how do we best meet those guests where they are and best meet our employees where they are is to know who we are and where we want to be. And if we make those decisions consistently aligned with those things, what's our purpose and what's our vision? 5 years down the road, we're going to be, we have a better chance of being successful. If we are trying to figure out right now, what is my strategy for getting us back to normal? It's going to be a very difficult process for us to adapt to an environment that has changed. It was wonderful hearing Jeff talk about how his wife adapted. She's a people person, and she loved engaging with that face-to-face retail environment. But when the environment changed, the business changed, and she didn't change. She's still a people person. She's just adapted that characteristic about herself to be incredibly effective in this new business by being adept with social media. And that's the perfect approach to how we can be successful in this environment. Look, if we're consistent about our purpose, why are we here? If we're consistent about who we want to be, what is our vision? the changes in the environment don't need to change who we are and how and why we do those things. And so like changes in our own restaurant, everybody wearing masks and everybody wearing gloves and these behaviors are like when people come into our restaurant, when team members come into our restaurant, they come in one door, but they have to stay in their foyer and have their temperature taken before they're allowed into the restaurant. These are very, the kind of unsettling things that we're requiring of these folks. And what I'll tell you is that if we consistently communicate the important messages that we've chosen externally and internally, the people will realize that these changes that we need to accommodate because of the changed environment don't change who we are. It don't change why I'm coming to work. It don't change why I'm here serving guests. And I think that stuff is extraordinarily important. And so I couldn't agree stronger with this idea of that Jeff shared: vision, valuing relationships, virtualize, and volunteer. And virtualize for us is adapting to meet where our guests are. So on March 19th, the County of Los Angeles and the state of California closed my dining room. That's half my business. I mean, people know Chick-fil-A now in part, because of the drive-through, but it wasn't always a drive-through restaurant. In fact, the very first Chick-fil-A was in a mall and was predominantly carry-out. And right now in my restaurant, I have 0 carry-out. And so this idea of adapting to meet where my customers are is remarkably important. I have no dining room. I have the things that we're known for: refreshing people's beverages, clearing people's trays, offering additional sauces. The second mile service that people, I love. People tell us that they love coming to Chick-fil-A because we're exceeding their expectations and the level of customer service that they would expect in our industry. All of that's gone. I mean, my dining room is closed. How am I going to adapt? What are what's my trade space? What's important to me? Who are we? Okay. Who are we? What's our vision for the restaurant? And then not reacting to the stimulus of the changes necessarily and changing who we are, just going about adapting the ways that we're going to do things to meet our guests where they are, and frankly, to be optimally successful, meeting where our employees and where they are as well. And like Jeff mentioned, our vendors and our other partners that help us do business. For us, that's our franchisor, Chick-fil-A, and changing and increasing the communication with our corporate office, our support center, in a way that's, hey, this is what I'm doing for our business. This is what's appropriate for our community. And I just want to let you know that that's what we're doing, and making sure that we're having those conversations. Over.
Over. Thank you, Tom. Well, that was great. Well, we're going to take a few questions. Tom, I'm going to start off with you. And Paul Rogers on the phone. I know Paul and Lisa are sitting together. They're another brother-sister business coaching duo in the community, and they're doing great work. Paul, you wrote in a couple questions, so I think I'm going to ask a question that you kind of got to, but Nola also got to in part. And then Paul, if you have anything more to add or to kind of follow up on for Jeff or Tom, I'd like to call on you, and maybe you can unmute yourself and maybe do a follow-up. But Tom, I want to ask you a question, and you got to this in large part talking about how that feeling for your employees walking through that door, wearing masks, having their temperatures checked. How are you dealing with employees' apprehension about taking that next step in terms of reopening your business? How are you thinking about as far as the risks that you're assuming? And also there was another question that kind of tied to this, just from a practical standpoint. I know a lot of people in kind of the retail or public spaces are asking themselves about what do they need to be thinking about in terms of signage, displays, kind of that best practice. How are you thinking through setting up in the near future as you begin to allow people back into your restaurant? So kind of a two-part question.
Sure. I'll ask the second part first, or answer the second part first. So the big thing there is that, our dining room is closed and we are closed for carry out. That was a deliberate decision. It is legal for me to have my restaurant open for people to come in, order face-to-face, and get their food and leave. You can go across the street to Hook Burger and order that exact same way. You can go across the street to Jersey Mike's, which is a restaurant that I love. They do a fantastic job supporting the community as well. You can go order face-to-face, get your food, and leave that restaurant. And so for me, like when I think about when I reopen our dining room, and we have a staged approach that we have planned in terms of how we're going to reopen, allow guests back into our restaurant. Other restaurants are already doing it. And so, it just similar to, I'm not changing the way that we do business or who we are. So I'm always watching, how do my competitors do business? I am a student of their game, and I'm a student of my own game. I am a customer of my own restaurant. And so I'll go to Jersey Mike's. I'll see what are they doing? How are they approaching this carry out approach? Does it work? I'll look for, peer organizations or organizations that, Jersey Mike's and our Chick-fil-A, they may not be the same scale in terms of sales. So I'll look at a place that is maybe a larger scale, maybe more open registers or a larger, ordering area. So the post office, for example, what's the post office doing and does it work? What are ways that maybe they can improve? So I would say there are businesses that are open, those essential businesses, and even there are some non-essential businesses that are open as well, but look at those companies that you respect that are open, watch to see how they're doing business, and replicate it to the things that you're seeing that's working, and adapt the things that you see that aren't working for your own situation. And then the second piece is this idea of dealing with apprehension of team members, and this kind of goes back to this idea of communication. So, we were closed for 7 weeks. We opened up on basically a week, 10 days before all of this happened in March, after being closed for 7 weeks. And our focus while we were closed, and I retained those employees, was this idea of who are we, why are we in business, who do we want to be, this whole idea of purpose and vision, studying our own purpose and vision, and then going back to basics of just learning, being brilliant at the basics, going back and studying the service model and service behaviors and food preparation behaviors that maybe it had been a while since some of our longer term employees had studied. But the bottom line is that we took that time off to get on the same page. And I would hope that those businesses that have been closed as a result of this have made good use of that time by A, getting back on the same page in terms of the purpose and vision, and B, getting back to basics so that we're brilliant at the basics of what we do. Now, how we do it has to change. And that's the idea of finding our place in this marketplace. Okay. But who we are, why we do it, and necessarily the methodology of the business that we do, that stuff can't change, and we have to make good use of the time before we reopen, so that we're prepared for that. Now, team members, my employees, they need to understand who we are and who we want to be, and then we can have those conversations about what are you worried about. Okay, if they don't understand why are we, what's our purpose in being a Chick-fil-A in Santa Clarita, and who do we want to be in this community, it's very, very difficult for us to have a conversation about why they don't want to come to work. But if they understand who we are and who we want to be, then we can kind of say, all right, you understand that I care about you. Okay. You understand that we're in this together. Now, how can we be who we want to be, all right? And how do we achieve our long-term goals, mutual long-term goals in this environment? And let's have that conversation. If you, Jeff did a fantastic job. If you're in it just to make a buck, if you're in business to make a buck, it's very, very difficult to have the conversation of, when Julie comes and says, hey, I don't think I want to come to work. I don't think I'm going to be safe there. And you're into it just about being a buck. That's a pretty short conversation. But if they understand the purpose and vision of the restaurant, of the organization itself, and they know that you care about them, then that conversation about like, hey, I don't know if I want to come to work. I don't know if it's going to be safe. That's a very different conversation. And so I would say that you have to do that groundwork. Again, I mean, it's like, there's no easy button. Okay. There's no easy button. You have to do the groundwork. You have to build that relationship with your customers, just like Jeff did. You have to build the relationship with your employees, just like Jeff said. And then those conversations become, they're on a more firm foundation. It's a foundation of trust. You can't just go in and say, in an environment of apprehension, you can't go into it with a weak foundation and expect a whole lot of successful conversations. Over.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. And thank you for several, been messaging me in the chat. And some people are choosing to message me directly, which I only see, and that's fine. You can also message to everyone in the group. Jill has gotten in a couple of questions, and I think she's going to summarize it for us. But Jill, go ahead and ask. I think you have something for Jeff or Tom.
Yeah, so in our business, we're a printing and mailing company. I'm finding that the supply chains are starting to break down, and the cost of material for manufacturing products is taking longer and costing more money. For example, just this week, I got an estimate on some paper, and it was going to be $5,000. And when I bid the job out, it was awarded. And when I went to order the paper the next day, they said, oh no, that price now is $7,000. And that was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I had to negotiate with them. They've been a vendor of ours for years. We always pay our bills on time. I think we handled it properly. We, said, hey, we're sticking together. We're paying our invoices. What can you do to help? And basically, they ended up giving us the price they quoted. But we're finding that we're having to, every single job, we're having to, work through it. It's because the supply chain is just breaking down, and there's demand for certain products. So any comment on that?
Yeah, Jeff, do you want to take that?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Having supply chains that stretch as far as China and Africa, I'm very familiar with that and familiar with the breakdown of supply chains. And so one of the things that we do is we negotiate with those suppliers and we try to buy in greater quantities. Well, that's the relationship with our bank, in which we try to increase our amount of working capital to make that kind of negotiation, to create that leverage. But there's also another strategy, and that is understanding that everyone who's in your business is facing the same challenge to the supply chain that you are. So it's not like you're at a competitive disadvantage. So what you have to do now, once those prices increase, and I think Paul should unmute and get into this conversation as well, is that you have to say, well, what are the intrinsic things that I bring to my customer, those value propositions that separate me from these customers? And then that allows you to talk about raising your prices when it is necessary. Consider this. If you have been a consistent deliverer of value to your customers for years, and now all of a sudden you're raising your prices modestly, that's a conversation to be had. And I think most of your customers will understand it if it's done in a way that allows them to both have value as well. But now you've got to work that other side of your relationship, not the financial side in which it's dollars and cents, but what you mean to these customers, what you have meant to them in the past, and why this is something that you're doing. And not only that, it gets back to Milady Marketing as a entity that is giving to the community. It's all of those things that allow your value to be made to go up front and center to the customer, that allows you to ask for a little bit more because you have an intrinsic value that you bring.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Folks, we are coming down to the end of our hour. I think I have one more question to kind of follow up with you, Tom, and we'll try to squeeze in the last couple of minutes kind of for final wrap up from both of you. But we had two similar questions. One we already mentioned from, I believe Paul mentioned, as far as marketing, and as far as your strategy maximizing sales and kind of the phased reopening of business. I think I'd like to hear your perspective on that as well. And then Stacy from Logix also asked another question. I think that would be pertaining to you as well, Tom. As a business with a long track record of being a good community partner, how has your community relations strategy changed during the crisis? And how do you envision it being different going forward? So there's, again, a kind of marketing and / sales question, and also kind of community relations, but I think you could tackle both of those if possible.
Yeah, so second question first. Again, our community outreach strategy is simple. We always find a way to say yes. It's not necessarily yes to the specific request being made of us, but it's yes to the ability to fulfill a need of the person that's asking. I would say in this particular environment, we are maybe even a little bit more proactive about looking for those opportunities. But again, who are we and what do we want to be? It hasn't changed. We always want to find a way to say yes. In terms of marketing, I don't really consider myself a marketer. What I consider myself is a communicator in terms of the strategy. I feel like I've got an internal and an external target audience, and I've got a specific message that I want to share with them. So I want to communicate extraordinarily effectively with those that I choose to. That's my target audience. Those are internal, those are my team members, and external, my guests, my customers, and potentially even my vendors, and specific messages. So currently we've changed a little bit the messaging that we're trying to convey in this environment. The message, if you look at our social media, Facebook, Instagram, what I'm trying to say there is we're here for you, and here's how. Okay. In the things that we are choosing to share with our community, in terms of like images and text and even email, is that message. And so everything's trying to be consistent with we're here for you and here's how. One very consistent message that we've had since I've owned and operated the restaurant is that we care about what you care about. And I have not been, I've deliberately not necessarily shared that message in this time, because I'm focusing on this idea of that we're here for you and here's how. Ways in which this idea of we care about you, we care about what you care about. We 2 weeks ago, I believe, Henry Mayo, we partnered with a local business donating 800 meals to the hospital at Henry Mayo. 200 meals this week to Kaiser. We donated, we partnered with the city to support the sheriffs and the fire department, all within the last 2 weeks. That's a community outreach that we're not necessarily talking about in terms of social media right now, because I'm trying to be very, very consistent with the message that I'm trying to convey. So we have not changed who we are. We are changing how we're doing it by being a little bit more proactive and partnering with other organizations potentially to reach out and support the community. But we're not really talking about it because I'm trying to be consistent about the message that I'm trying to convey. Does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Paul he's heading off to the next meeting, as I know many of us are. But Paul messaged you, Tom, and Jeff in terms of in the chat there for a nice message, so everyone can see that. But thank you again. Jeff, can I give you a 60-second wrap up?
Sure. I think one of the things that's also important to consider, and I really do appreciate Tom's comments because I learned from them as well, and I'm going to be sharing those with my wife back in St. Louis as she's running her business. But one of the key things you need to do is don't try to rebuild, relaunch, reopen alone. Make sure that you have a team around you that believes in you and believes in the business and will tell you the hard truths about where you are and where things are, and then will be committed to doing everything they can to support you. I think that is very, very critical. You should have a team of people who you can go to, cry, rant, do whatever you need in order to get a broader perspective of what it means to do things right in the middle of a crisis. Because one of the things about a crisis is there's tons of opportunity to do things wrong. And so you really want the right people around you. That's very critical. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, folks, we're going to wrap it up. We always try to end right on time. I can't say enough as far as a thank you to Jill and Dr. Van Hook and their vision of putting these together. It's really our pleasure to support it from a standpoint of the foundation. Thank you for the work of our members and as far as what you're doing from a philanthropic standpoint and helping our students. I want to remind you, I put it up on the screen. I hope that you should be able to see that. The next week is on Friday, May 15th, Improving Employee Engagement, Leadership Strategies During a Post-COVID-19 Period. This is in part a result of Jeff's team. Jeff's team runs the Employee Training Institute, and Dr. Barbara Sweet is a key presenter and instructor on an ongoing basis with that program. And of course, we reached out to a fellow Chancellor Circle member, Scorpion, and the Senior Vice President of People Operation, Rafael Paris. So come back next week. It will be at 10 a.m. I want to say thank you to those that come in our steering committee, Jill, Nico Cardenas, Stacy Klein, T. Meyer, Claudia Dunn Martinez, Joe Placco. Thank you for your input and all this. And of course, thank you, Carly, for your hard work during all these calls last few weeks. So be safe, everybody, be well, and be kind to one another in this week, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.